Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's make a cover for our sewing machine. But let's also make it so that we can carry our sewing machine. And while we're at it, let's put lots of pockets in it so we can lay it flat, have the sewing machine sit on it, and we have lots of pockets in the front of us. And we're going to be able to customize this to any machine. So the cover we're going to make today is a cover that is going to lay over top. It'll have a hole for the handle, pockets in the front and pockets in the back. The fun part is when we take this cover off, it's going to lay flat and go underneath the machine, so the pockets are going to be in front of the machine. So we're going to be able to use this as we're sitting down in front of the machine, and we can use it to cover the machine. It'll be a perfect project to travel with. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get some measurements for our sewing machine. Every sewing machine is different, so you're going to be able to get your own measurements. The first measurement we're going to need is the size along the bottom. Now some machines come out a little bit and some come to a point. This side is a little wider, so we need to just find that longest point and give yourself an extra inch. So in my case, my machine bottom is going to be 15 inches. Now I need to measure all the way around. Once again, we need to measure the widest part. So if I go from the back of my machine and over, it's 29 inches. This part of the machine, in my case, is a little smaller, so I'm going to use that larger measurement. So I have the 15 inches and the 29 inches. From there, get a measurement that goes up to the top. And in my case, it's 11.5 inches. So I know I have 11.5 inches that's pretty much flat in the front, and 11.5 inches that's pretty much flat in the back. So now I have that top measurement at about 7 inches. Once we have our measurement, we're going to make a paper template. And that paper template is going to give us an opportunity to find our handle placement. So I have a piece of paper. It's 15 inches by 29 inches. And this is that 11.5 inches. So I have that from the back and on the front. From there, I've just taken this paper and I've done some rough sketches that I could feel through the machine for the handle. And then I've cut out the handle. And then I've taped it together and recut it out and taped it together and recut it out until I get the exact size that I want. So you can see where I changed that handle a couple of times. So your cutout is going to be different. But having this cutout definitely saves us a lot of work after. I do want my cover to go over that handle, and it's going to lay flat. So I'm going to have pockets here and pockets along the back. But you can see that that handle is going to sit nice for me. At first I cut out the whole handle, and then I decided I wanted that little L shape so that this top is a little bit more flat. So however you want to cut out your handle, do it on this paper. It's better to cut and paste on that paper than it is anywhere else. I did mark front on my paper. I have the top where that handle's going to come out and the back. So that is my finished size, my finished template. I do want to have this cover to have some stability to it. So I'm going to use a sewable foam. And there's lots of different kinds you can get. You can get a sew-in foam. You can also get a fusible foam. But for this project, I am going to be using the Basel sew-in foam. The sew-in foam is really just that, a very thin piece of foam. And you can see where that's going to hold its shape. We're going to be able to sew pockets on this, and it's still going to hold that shape that we want. I want the foam cut out the same size as that template. And for now, I'm not going to worry about that handle. So I have that one piece of foam. I'm going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are bigger than this to cover the entire foam. So I have lots of extra hanging over, and that's fine because I'm going to trim it down after. I do like a 1/2 inch or more of a seam allowance all the way around. And on one piece of the foam, I am going to put the F for the front. From here, I do want to stitch this fabric on. I don't want it moving as I'm working with it. Just stitch approximately 3 or 4 lines, just coming down the center. And that's just going to hold on those layers. And any sewing machine is going to be able to stitch through this foam with no problems. So I have 3 rows of stitching just to hold those centers down. Now I'm going to work on the pockets. On each side, I'm going to have 1 large pocket and 1 small pocket. And those pockets are going to vary depending on that size. Now, my top was at 11.5, so I don't want to have a pocket larger than 11.5. So I'm going to do a pocket at 10 inches. So I have a piece of fabric that is 20 inches, then I'm going to be able to fold it down, and that's going to give me a nice finish on both sides. Give that a good press. Once that fabric is pressed in half, do a row of top stitching right along that folded edge. So I'm going to have 2 big pockets on each side. Now I want some small pockets. My small pocket is going to start with a piece of fabric, 10 inches. Fold it in half, I now have 5 inches. And do another row of top stitching right along those 2 folded edges. And those little pockets will go on each end. For the front 2 pockets, I do want to have a lot of little pockets. This is the one that's going to sit under the machine, so it'll hold a tape measure, some pins, scissors, anything like that, so we can decide what size our pockets are going to be. So you can do some large ones, some small ones, some skinny ones, whatever you want. This is where you're going to work that pocket size out and stitch through all of these layers. So when those pieces have been stitched together, I'm going to be able to lay them on, and I'm going to stitch around later. The back pocket, I want a big one for a cutting mat or for my extension table. And for this little pocket, I just want to divide it in half. So I'll stitch those pockets together. And once that pocket's done, I'm going to be able to put that on the end. Now, if you're wanting to take one of these big pockets and turn them into pockets, we can move this piece out of the way and stitch right along that foam. So if I want to have the extension table coming this way, I can stitch 1 seam here, flip this pocket over, and stitch another seam. So you will be able to customize this large part of the pocket as well. So this is how I am going to have my pocket layers together. And I still have a lot of seam allowance. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to be using this foam as a direction. So I'm going to put all of those layers together, and then I'm going to put another piece of fabric right on top. And this fabric will be that inside fabric. So we get to match up the sides and pin those layers together. I do want to pin from the foam side. Once those layers are pinned together, I'm going to be able to stitch all the way around the outside, following the edge of this foam. So you could use a zipper foot for this. And leave a little opening because we do need to turn this right side out. So the foam has not been stitched down, but the layers have been stitched together, and we use that foam as a guide. Now I'm going to be able to trim off that extra seam allowance, and I do have that area that I can turn everything right side out. And if you have an add-a-quarter ruler, this is a fun time to use it. As I'm turning that right side out, I'm going to be able to poke out those corners and make sure that foam is nice and flat right along the inside. When we finish tucking, we can give that a nice press. Once this is all flat, we need to put our handle spot in. Every handle is going to be a little bit different. But what we want to do is start with 2 pieces of fabric that is bigger than that opening. So I'm looking at something bigger. And I'm going to need 2 pieces of fabric, put them together, stitch all the way, leave a little opening, turn it right side out and press it. So we're going to have 2 good sides. Once this has been stitched together and turned right side out, I'm not going to worry about that opening. That will be taken care of later. I want this piece to go on the top of the bag so that it's going to fit in this opening. So move that in, check with your template to make sure that it's going to fit. So when you look at my opening, I have this little U shape. I will be stitching all the way around, but I need to transfer those marks onto this piece of fabric. So I'm going to peek underneath, make sure everything is good. I can pin that piece on, put that template back over top, and draw that shape. What I'm drawing is going to be a stitching line. So I have that shape, and now I can stitch all the way around that shape. Once I've stitched, I'm going to be able to cut in the center of that stitching. So there is my stitching line, and I've stitched all the way around. So I have that opening, and I have a small 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. When you have a little square corner, we need to snip into that corner. Get a little pair of scissors and snip right to that corner. And I'm going to do all 4 corners. And then any of these ends that have the little points, snip off a little point. You can always move that seam allowance and trim off a little bit of the foam on those corners. Now I'm going to be able to take this top piece and turn it to the back side. Poke out those corners and turn the whole thing towards the back. As I fold that fabric to this back side, I get as close as I can to this seam. Put a lot of pins, and now I'm going to give it a really good press from this side so that all of those seams are going to flatten, and then do a row of top stitch all the way around the outside. So we have a nice finish from the front side and a nice finish from that back. I will be hand stitching this down, but you're more than welcome to machine stitch it. Now that this is done, I'm going to do a row of top stitching all the way around, and that's going to close off the seam that we left open. Any shape handle will work this way as long as it is a continuous line. So the cover fits so that it touches the surface on both the front and the back. It has a big pocket in the back with some smaller ones, or whatever pocket you decided on. I have the handle that fits inside that opening, and all of my front pockets. Now there is one more thing that we can add to this, and this would be optional. A little tie to hold this together. So if you're traveling with this, you might want to add a little tie on the one side and then the other. You're going to be able to stitch that onto the sides wherever it seems best for your machine. And then we can tie that, and that's going to hold that case together. Those ribbons are just going to hold it together, so as we're carrying this, this does not flop around. So that big pocket fits my extension table and other tools. The front will fit whatever tools that I need, and I can pick it up and carry it to go. When I'm ready to use my machine, I'm going to undo the ribbons, take out any of the things from the back pockets. I will be able to place the machine right over top of this so I can use those pockets. If I want, I can move that and even use that big pocket. This back is not going to get in the way. It protects my counter, and this ribbon means I can tie a pair of scissors on it. So whenever I'm at a retreat or at a sewing class, I will never lose my scissors. So we now have a sewing machine cover that we can carry the cover with, so it can be like a case, and it has all of these great pockets in the front and in the back. And you're going to be able to customize it to any machine. This nice smooth shape is all created with some foam. I do hope you liked today's episode of Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I do have a newsletter, all under Sew Very Easy, and it's free. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.